Hi, I'm Amy and this is A Star Reads, and today I'm going to be doing week 3 of my Great British Bake Off book recommendations. And this is Bread Week, which I'm a little nervous about because this was tricky. This one was really tricky, and I hope these books work. I mean, obviously I'm going to make them work, but you're just gonna have to give me some creative license with this one because I had to get creative. So if you're new to this series on my channel, I'm giving book recommendations for each episode of the Great British Bake Off Season 12, and I'm using elements of each episode to do book recommendations. This is the third one, so if you haven't watched the other two, I would go ahead and check those out. They were a lot of fun. And if you haven't watched a Great British Bake Off episode about Bread Week, I would watch that first because I will be giving away spoilers in this episode. So if you're also not watching the Great British Bake Off and you just like book recommendations, this is a fun way to go about getting them. It'll be interesting today, especially because it was very tricky. So stick around if you want to see how I did. Yeah. So I actually got this idea from Ruby Red, and thank you so much, Ruby, for coming up with this amazing idea about Great British Bake Off, because such a great show, and this has been fun. I've been having a lot of fun with this. So check out her video where she does book recommendations for the Great British Bake Off. She does a little bit more of a general concept where she's looking at all the types of themes that the Great British Bake Off does, but it's fantastic, and her idea was so much fun that I had to take it and run with it. So thank you so much, Ruby. So without further ado, let's get into Bread Week. Bread Week is always tricky because Paul Hollywood, one of the main hosts of the show, well, he's not the host, he's the judge, but he's the one that started the show. Paul Hollywood is mostly a bread baker, that's his specialty, and so the contestants are always really nervous about this round because, for one, bread's not easy to make, and two, it's his specialty. So if you do it wrong, Paul will know. You can't hide it from Paul. It's always fun to watch this episode because some people come out as being really good in the breads, and you see oh, these people excelled. And then you see other people who really struggled with this topic. So this week was no different. There were definitely some people who were much stronger in breads than others. The signature challenge, which is the very first challenge they do for each episode, they had to make focaccia. So focaccia is this rustic bread. It's not really highly flavored itself. It's a very simple bread that is flat, and oftentimes they put toppings on it. So of course, traditionally you'd put olive oil on top of it with maybe some rosemary or some kind of herb. But then you can also put cheese and olives and different types of things on the focaccia to make it sort of pizza-like, even though the dough is nothing like pizza dough. And it's delicious, and it's a really good base to build off of. And then also the bread consistency itself has a lot of holes in it. So that's focaccia. And so for my book recommendation, I'm gonna go with The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society by Mary Ann Schaefer and Annie Barrows. The reason I went with this book is because we're sort of going back to a more rustic feel with this book. We have a character who lives in London, but this is after World War II, and she's a writer who's trying to build up her writing career. She had some amazing successes during World War II, but she doesn't want to write her comedic style anymore. She wants to write what she feels like writing, what she loves to write. And so she kind of goes back to the very basics of books, and she hears about this literary society in this little island called Guernsey, which started because of World War II, and it started for strange reasons that, I don't want to get into because I don't want to give anything away. She actually goes to Guernsey to learn more about them. And of course, a lot of things build on top of this. And I'm going really heavily with the build factor here. So she starts with this base of friendship and getting to know these people, and then she starts building relationships with them. And the other element of this that I think works with the whole rustic aspect is that a lot of people on Guernsey not only live a very simplistic lifestyle because they grow all their own food and they often do farming for their livelihood, but they've had so much taken away from them during World War II. The Germans made Guernsey a base where they would take everything from the residents who lived there and eat it, basically. Their life became so rustic and so hard because of World War II that they're, at this point, trying to build up their life again. So a lot of this starts with actually building relationships or maintaining their relationships. And that, I kind of think about comfort when I think of focaccia. Like I said, it's a rustic sort of bread, but it's also very comforting, I think that the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society book actually works really well for focaccia. So after the signature challenge, we go into the technical challenge. And for this one, Paul set the challenge of being olive and cheese ciabatta breadsticks with tzatziki sauce. This one, I was at a loss. To be honest, I was at a loss. But I went with The Passion by Jeanette Winterston. This is a nice little short book that I recently read. And I think short works for breadsticks because breadsticks are a snack item, or they're a little item that you start your meal with. So it's smaller, you know? I think of breadsticks as being smaller than, say, a loaf of bread or a full meal. So when I think of ciabatta and tzatziki, ciabatta is an Italian type of bread, but tzatziki is more of a Mediterranean. I think of Greek, I think of Mediterranean countries. And I know that Italy is in the Mediterranean, but I tend to think of more like Greece, Turkey, places like that with tzatziki. So then that makes me think of a blending of cultures. So you got ciabatta, you got tzatziki, and then in The Passion, you've got a blending of cultures because one of the characters is Italian and she comes from Venice. And then the other character is from a very small little town in France, North France, if I remember correctly. And also the book is about passion. The book is about things that you feel so strongly about, that you're yearning to have in your life. And I mean, people feel very strongly about olives. Sometimes it's strongly good, sometimes it's strongly bad, but people feel very strongly about them. And then, of course, a lot of people yearn to have cheese in their life, so so stupid. And bread. So many people have passion about bread as well. So, I mean, I think that those are all perfectly fine reasons for picking The Passion by Jeanette Winterston. The showstopper challenge, the determining challenge that will decide who stays, who goes. It's always a rough round, but it's always a fascinating round because they have to do something a lot more elaborate than you would see in the first two challenges. So for this one, they needed to make a 3D display with milk bread. And the reason this was a challenge is because milk bread is a soft, smooth dough. Smooth is good for milk bread because you can make more decorations with it. But soft is more difficult because you need to make a 3D display, which obviously needs to be large and hold itself. It's a soft dough, so it could easily cave in on itself or have problems. Another one where I took creative license and I went with The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus by L. Frank Baum. And the reason I went for this is because this story itself is a very smooth, soft, warm-hearted story. You know, you think of milk, you think life, you think of happiness, you think of children. And The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus is really heavily based on the happiness of children. Santa Claus was a character, at least in this book, who wanted all children to have love and feel special and get taken care of, you know, no matter what station of life you come from. So that's why he became Santa Claus. Oh, and another thing, you can make a lot of decorations with milk bread because of how smooth the dough is. And The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus is very beautifully written. The writing style is whimsical and fun and sweet and gorgeous. It's gorgeous. And so I think this hits the prompt actually pretty well. The more that I talk about it, the more I'm convincing myself. Now it will get spoilery, so just to warn you, we'll be talking about the winner of the episode and the loser of the episode. The winner was, unsurprisingly, Giuseppe, who is turning out to be my favorite at this point. Giuseppe is fantastic. He created Year 5 a Day, which is basically a basket full of fruits and vegetables. Everything was made out of bread. And so it's like all the things you're supposed to get on a daily basis in your diet. So very healthy, made with bread. So for this one, I went a little more literal. I actually went with The Omnivore's Dilemma by Michael Pollan. And the reason I decided on going for this one was because this was actually a nonfiction book that I really enjoyed. It was about food. It was about where your food comes from and some of the issues with food production. It's not really like a, this is what you should be eating. It's more like a, this is where your food is coming from and why it can be problematic. I feel like he did a great job of explaining a lot of the historical situations that have impacted our eating nowadays and the food that we put on our plate every day and how that looks in the US especially, because this is mostly focused on the US. But the reason I thought this worked really well is because it was talking about the health of our diets and how a lot of times our society actually impacts what we're putting into our bodies and a lot of our socioeconomic status and, history affects that. Your daily 5 is based off societal standards of what kinds of foods you should be putting in your body. And that's often dictated by health programs that are sometimes political and very controversial sometimes. Like, food is a topic that not everyone agrees on. So yeah, wow. I'm convincing myself more and more and more. What great book choices. So now, unfortunately, we have to talk about the losing showstopper. And for this, we lost Rochika. I feel like she hit her limit in this round, unfortunately. It seems like most of the bakers do at some point. They start hitting their limit. I can't imagine what it would be like to be under this much pressure and to have to do things in a timed fashion like this. It seems horrible to me. I would never go on one of these shows. But I like watching them. So for this one, Rochika made a birdcage from her milk bread, and the book that I'm matching with this is The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. And the reason I'm matching that is because I think a birdcage, I think of something that is beautiful, that is being caged, and that wants to get out there and experience the world, but can't. I feel like The Year of the Witching works for this quite a bit, because for one, it's a cult story, and so there's a community, a very tight-knit community that puts these heavy rules, heavy limitations, heavy expectations on the people that live within the community. And specifically, the main character, Emmanuelle, is unique because she's half black, half white, which is not like everybody else in the community, and that sets her apart from everybody. It makes them more intrigued by her, but it also makes them afraid of her and treat her poorly or treat her differently. And so she's sort of set aside. She's put in her own little cage within this community, and she just wants to get out. She's learning more about her mother. She's learning more about her father. She is so trapped. You can't leave the community. It's really hard to just get out and do whatever you want. So that's my choice for the final prompt. Let me know in the comment section down below if you think these worked. If you think they were terrible, and that's okay. That's okay, because next week hopefully will be better. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you can see what happens next week, which is Dessert Week, week 4 of the Great British Bake Off book recommendations. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you later. Bye.